I am 72 years old. I've been married for 53 years, and I am a sister in the church. That sentence still surprises people when they hear it, but it's been my life for a long time now. At this age, surprise doesn't interest me much anymore. What interests me is truth, especially the kind that waits until you're tired enough to stop protecting it. I'm not telling this story because I have clarity about everything. I'm telling it because I no longer have the energy to pretend I did things right just because I stayed. Staying is not the same thing as tending. I learned that too late. When you're young, marriage feels like a decision you make once. You choose someone, you commit, you build a life. That's how I thought of it. I didn't understand that marriage is not a single promise, but 1,000 small choices, most of them invisible, most of them easy to dismiss at the moment. I met my husband when I was 29. I was already a sister then, already committed to service, to responsibility, to showing up where I was needed. He admired that about me. I admired that he didn't feel threatened by it. We both thought that meant we were aligned. What it really meant was that neither of us noticed how easily duty could crowd out intimacy. One of the first things I learned not to do in a marriage is to assume love will speak for itself. I thought affection didn't need translation. I thought consistency was enough. I cooked. I showed up. I kept the house steady. I didn't realize that love, unspoken, slowly becomes invisible, not absent, just unseen. I wish I had said more, not big declarations, just small acknowledgments. I wish I had named what he did for me, who he was to me, while he was still alive to hear it. I thought he knew I appreciated the way he fixed things without being asked, the way he remembered my mother's birthday, the way he'd wait up even when I came home late from evening service. But knowing and hearing are different countries. Words build the bridge between them. I never built enough bridges. I expected him to feel loved through my actions alone, forgetting that people need to hear the shape of their significance out loud. Another thing not to do is confuse being busy with being necessary. I told myself I was indispensable. People needed me. The church needed me. Families leaned on me. I wore my usefulness like proof that I was living correctly. What I didn't see was how often I brought my exhaustion home and called it virtue. I sat across from my husband at the table with my body there and my mind already elsewhere. I believed he understood. I never actually asked. I scheduled my life in 15-minute increments and felt productive. But busyness is a kind of hiding. It's socially acceptable, even admirable, but it still keeps you away from what's tender. I used my calendar like a shield. Every commitment I made to someone else was a small retreat from the intimacy that required nothing but time and attention. I remember him asking once if we could take a weekend away, just the two of us. I said yes, but never found the weekend. There was always something more urgent. Urgent is a liar. It makes you believe that later we'll feel the same as now. Do not mistake silence for peace. That's a quiet mistake, and it feels respectful at first. We didn't argue much. We prided ourselves on that. We thought calm meant healthy, but calm can also mean avoidance. There were things we didn't talk about because we didn't want to disturb the balance. Over time, that balance became a distance neither of us knew how to cross. We developed a language of pleasantries, of surface-level check-ins. How was your day? Became a question with only acceptable answers. We stopped saying the harder things. I felt lonely today. I'm scared we're drifting. I miss who we used to be. Silence becomes its own kind of agreement. It says, we will not go there. And once you've made that agreement enough times, you forget there was ever a there to go to. Peace without honesty is just a well-maintained pretense. Another thing not to do is assume time will soften what you refuse to face. I thought if something truly mattered, it would come back around. If a feeling was important enough, it would insist. I didn't realize how many feelings leave politely when they're ignored. They don't make noise, they just go quiet. I believed in the myth of the right moment. I told myself we'd talk about the important things when the time was right. But time doesn't deliver moments, we create them. I waited for him to bring up his disappointments. He waited for me to notice them. We both waited, and in that waiting, whole conversations died before they were born. The things that matter most are often the things easiest to postpone because they don't come with deadlines. But relationships have their own kind of deadline, and you don't always know when you've reached it. I also learned not to let roles replace relationships. I was a sister. I was respected. I was looked to for guidance. At home, I carried that same posture without meaning to. I listened the way you listen to parishioners, not the way you listen to someone whose happiness is tied to your own. I was thoughtful, but I wasn't vulnerable. I offered calm when what was needed was closeness. I became very good at being wise, at being steady, at offering perspective. But wisdom kept at arm's length is just another wall. He didn't need my counsel most of the time. He needed my mess, my uncertainty, my unguarded self. I gave him the version of me I gave everyone else, the capable one, the one who had answers. I saved my doubts for private moments, and in doing so, I made him a stranger to half of who I was. You cannot be intimate with someone who only shows you their competence. Do not assume longevity equals depth. We were together for decades, but that didn't mean we kept growing together. We grew alongside each other, sometimes facing the same direction, sometimes not. Years passed easily because nothing dramatic happened. That's the danger. When nothing explodes, you believe nothing is breaking. I thought duration was its own achievement. 50 years, 40 years, 30. Each anniversary felt like proof we were doing it right. But a marriage can be long and still be shallow. We accumulated years the way you accumulate belongings, without always examining what they meant or whether they were bringing us closer. I didn't ask him, even once in the last decade, what he still dreamed about. I didn't know if he felt fulfilled or simply resigned. Duration measures endurance, not depth. I wish I had cared more about the quality of our years than the quantity. Another thing not to do is postpone curiosity about the person you married. I thought I knew him. I knew his habits, his preferences, his routines. I didn't know his quiet disappointments. I didn't ask what he had given up. I didn't notice when his laughter changed. I thought knowing someone was a finished task. In the beginning, we asked each other everything. We stayed up late discovering each other's stories, fears, and strange childhood memories. But somewhere along the way, I stopped asking new questions. I assumed I had learned all there was to learn. People aren't books you finish. They're rivers that keep moving. He changed. I changed. But we stopped being curious about those changes. I couldn't have told you what worried him in his last 5 years. I couldn't have named a new interest he'd developed or an old dream he'd let go. I treated him like a known quantity, and in doing so, I missed the person he was becoming. Do not wait for a crisis to become attentive. When his health started to fail, I became very present. I rearranged my life. I showed up fully then. I told myself that was proof of love. It was love, but it was reactive love. It was love born of fear, not attentiveness. You cannot compress years of inattention into a season of devotion and expect it to feel the same. I was there for every doctor's appointment, every difficult night, every moment of decline. I held his hand. I advocated. I cared deeply. But I couldn't stop thinking about all the ordinary mornings I had rushed through, all the evenings I had been too tired to really see him. Crisis makes us present because it forces our hand. But the love that matters most is the love we give when nothing is forcing us, when there's no urgency, just the quiet opportunity to choose someone again. Another thing not to do is assume providing stability means providing connection. We were secure, the bills were paid, the days were predictable. I thought that was kindness. But connection requires risk. It requires asking questions you don't already know the answers to. It requires admitting you might be wrong. I avoided that because stability felt safer. I built a life that ran smoothly. I was proud of that. We had routines that worked, systems that held. I thought I was building a foundation, and I was, but I confused the house with the home. Stability is necessary, but it's not sufficient. You can have every structure in place and still be strangers. Connection asks you to step outside what's comfortable, to say the thing you're unsure about, to risk being misunderstood. I didn't want to risk our peace, so I never risked our depth either. Do not underestimate the damage of always being composed. I believed restraint was maturity. I believed holding myself together was strength. What I didn't realize was that my husband rarely saw me undone, and because of that, he rarely felt needed. I didn't let him comfort me. I didn't let him in. I cried alone. I processed my struggles in private. When I came to him, I came resolved, already past the hardest part. I thought I was sparing him my burdens. What I was really doing was denying him the chance to carry something for me, to matter in my moments of need. Being strong all the time doesn't protect love. It starves it. People want to be necessary to each other. I robbed him of that, and I robbed myself of the intimacy that comes from being held when you're falling apart. Another thing not to do is believe that good intentions cancel neglect. I never meant to be distant. I never meant to prioritize other people so consistently. But intention doesn't undo the pattern. Over time, what you repeat becomes what you are. I loved him. I intended to honor him. But intention lives in your head, and impact lives in the world. What he experienced was a wife who was often elsewhere, who gave her best energy to others, who came home depleted. No matter how much I meant well, the pattern told a different story. You cannot love someone only in theory. Love has to show up in hours and attention and presence again and again, or it becomes a beautiful idea that doesn't comfort anyone. In our later years, the house grew quieter. I thought that was simply age. I didn't see how much of that quiet had been practiced long before it arrived naturally. When he died, the silence didn't feel new. That's what frightened me most. What is permanently lost is not the arguments we never had or the mistakes we avoided. What is lost is the conversations that never happened, the questions that stayed unasked, the version of our marriage that might have existed if I had been braver earlier. Now, when I speak to you, I'm not offering guidance. I'm offering a witness. I stayed married. I stayed faithful. And still there are things I would undo if undoing were possible. Don't assume you'll notice when it's slipping. Don't wait until love becomes fragile to handle it gently. Don't believe time is neutral. It takes sides. I have limited time now. I know that. I sit with that knowledge quietly. I don't regret my life, but I regret my delays. I regret how long it took me to understand that marriage doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for presence again and again, especially when nothing seems urgent. That's all I have left to say.